I'm always just identifying if this looks like autoimmunity. I'm happy to assist in it and also give an interpretation with type 1 diabetes because we're unique birds.
It's the unawareness, and that's exactly what it is because we can find the information.
On how to support women with type 1 individually to a better degree.
Well, hello and welcome to the show. Hey, Kelly.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Always good to have you in here today. Well, today we're going to talk about something that comes up. This just came up in my group coaching session yesterday. We meet once a week, and just about every week, this topic comes up. And that's number one. And we're going to talk about two things, lab results and symptoms that kind of back that up. And in some cases, we're hoping doctors are paying attention when we're saying we're having symptoms. Even though, what is it we hear? Everything looks normal. You're fine. I'll see you in a year, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So today, we just want to talk about generally why we're getting that response. And it's really based on what they think they know with, these standard levels that are maybe showing up on your lab results, but really what optimal means. And we're going to dive into what to be asking the doctor. So what are you hoping the listeners here walk away with today?
My hope is I hope our listeners feel seen and heard from our conversation, and I hope that they feel empowered to ask specific questions to get better solutions for what they need.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. So with that, let's just start. Do you have a personal experience with this?
How many should I go through?
What's your most recent? Because I think I do know about that one. So
Oh, I'm not sure. I don't know. I've had a few. So the gist is everything looks fine and you're doing great. But at the end of the day, we know that something is kind of in our intuition or in the back of our mind that keeps us up a little bit later at night and maybe ChatGPTing or researching solutions or symptoms or trying to string together all the dots to tell a story. One of the stories that I'll go into is I like to do a lot of labs on myself. I like to evaluate my labs, even if they're not flagged in my chart with my endocrinologist or healthcare team, but to really look at my data, look how it trend from past labs in my life and try to understand like what symptoms am I feeling. And before I go further, I like to evaluate what symptoms I may have or a client may have by keeping a list of those and then going to labs. So I think symptoms are as important as data points when our blood is drawn. But one specific thing that came up more recently for me in the last year is a higher HSCRP. And HSCRP is high sensitivity CRP, and that's an inflammation marker that is not specific to any system in the body, but overall inflammation in the body. So mine has been fluctuating a lot more in the last year, and I've been inflammation hunting ever since. But just recently at my last endo appointment, my PA was like, that's fine, but it's not fine. Would it be fine if it was her lab?
it goes to show you, it
It's
all depends on who
absolutely,
you ask, right?
yeah, it
Right,
is.
right.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you brought up something I think is really important, which is why we both really encourage keeping track of symptoms. And whether that's logging it or, it's like you say, looking at those labs and comparing, we're lucky with the way that labs are reported. It's that kind of the timeline thing. I forget what they call it on the lab sheet, but it's basically, that the history to see what's different,
Yeah.
right? To look at that. So one of the things I wanted to talk about too is because it's standard or normal. Because sometimes a doctor will say, oh, well, it's normal. You're in the range. Even though, I don't think the red flag goes off unless we're symptomatic. Do you?
Yeah.
Even if we're getting everything is in green, everything looks great. I was like, oh, but I think if we're looking at that and you're still saying, and I can think of this one client that I work with who, when she came to our circle, she was extremely tired. She had all the classic symptoms, and I know you can relate because I know thyroid is something that you treat. And she had all the classic symptoms of low thyroid. Again, what we know, right? The severe tired, losing hair, cold, and then on top of that, she's also in menopause. So that's kind of the tricky where things can cross over. So what is it? Is it hormones? Is it thyroid? She did a really smart thing, and this is definitely, this was something that we all talked through within the group, and we all just kind of had our opinions, but it equipped her to go to the doctor and insist that I really think it's my thyroid. And they only tested, and I know you're going to just flip when you hear this. They only tested her TSH. How about that? An
Yeah.
endo's office, and they only tested her TSH. I think they might have done her T4. Is it inactive T4? It was a T4 marker.
Okay.
Didn't look at her T3, never checked her antibodies, even though it was something that, again, she walked in with this list that I gave her, very similar to what you give, as far as the full thyroid panel. It's really sad when we have specialists that don't know to look at all of it to really get an understanding.
Yeah. And when you said, I think I know your story. Now I know
Mm-hmm.
which story you're referencing. So I obviously have some favorite labs that I like to evaluate
Yeah.
on myself or clients, and I like to look at them together. And that CRP is just one that I like to zone in on real quick. Like, where's
Mm-hmm.
inflammation at the body? How's it overall? And that's just a point in time, just like a blood sugar reading in the morning versus a CGM. There's a lot more data in the latter.
Yeah.
So that's just a quick point that I zone in on, but we're going to jump to this thyroid panel conversation. And I'm very passionate about knowing a
Yeah, I know.
thyroid panel beyond the TSH and T4, because in endocrinology in a lot of institutions, the recommendation is just to have those two markers because they will not treat someone with type 1 diabetes or someone with thyroid disease much different, knowing antibody levels.
Mm-hmm.
However, when we look at using food as medicine and nutrition, if I see really high antibodies for thyroglobulin or TPO, I know that there's a bit of a plan, compass, a story to tell on how we can start to adjust diet to make those numbers come down. And what we're trying to do on this lever is to use food as medicine, reduce inflammation, and to calm the immune system. And we can do that by identifying some foods in the diet that might be more
Mm-hmm.
common to be problematic in people with thyroid disease or low thyroid, specifically Hashimoto's. And that can be things such as proteins, such as eggs, soy, dairy,
Mm-hmm.
gluten, to name a few. So that's
Okay.
usually where I'm looking. Okay, are people eating a ton of gluten, dairy, soy, or eggs? And are their TPOs, especially through the roof? What if we did an elimination diet in some shape or form for a few months and then took this lab again and let's see
Sure.
if it goes down?
Yeah.
Or that can be really, really overwhelming. I'm kind of putting the cart before the horse, but maybe it's as simple as, hey, we're going to go on a gluten-free experiment. Start small. Start with one of the things that's usually a bigger grenade of a prop with
Mm-hmm.
thyroid disease and autoimmunity and type 1 diabetes, and then check for those antibodies to see if they come down or at least maintained.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. And, but you bring up something that maybe I didn't know was I thought if and when antibodies are present, and I guess does it have to be a consistent test result in order to prove that there is the likelihood that Hashimoto's is kind of sitting in the background waiting to be activated. But what you said something that's really interesting is that this could be something lifestyle and food related that we can actually reverse. Is that
So the diagnosis of Hashimoto's
what's
as a
that?
dietitian, I
Yeah.
cannot diagnose. So I'm
Yeah.
never really saying this is a Hashimoto's diagnosis.
Right.
I'm always just identifying if this looks like autoimmunity. And if I see a high antibody, it looks like autoimmunity noise.
I lo-
So I tread lightly on that because I don't want people to be like, my dietitian told me I have a disease. Why didn't you tell me that?
it's
Um,
true. It's true.
and
Yeah.
so therefore, I'm just guiding the conversation on awareness of antibodies, how diet can be influenced. But something else lifestyle wise that can influence those levels would be gut health and overall toxins.
Yeah.
I also love talking about toxins and being
Mhm.
aware of toxins in our environment, but also how
Yeah.
to optimize our diet and lifestyle to remove them.
Right. Right.
But that's something else I'm thinking about too.
Yeah,
What?
yeah, and it just goes to show you there's a lot of layers to it, and, it's looking at the terrain. I love that word. I
Yeah,
had a guest use it on the show last year, and I just love that. It's just it's the terrain of the body.
it is. It
Yeah,
is.
it's looking at all the things that are influencing, again, these symptoms, and in some cases, lab results. So what's the difference between normal or standard and optimal? And
Yeah.
that might just be a simple answer, but I think still, I don't know that people even understand that there's optimal ranges as
Yeah.
opposed to what,
Absolutely.
yeah,
So when you're asking me this, I'm assuming you're asking what does it mean to have good labs in a conventional range? Usually like we have a lab, our data, the result,
yeah,
and then there's usually a range next to it to say if you're in it, high or low.
right,
And
right.
Conventional ranges are formulated from a bell curve of the
Mhm.
average abundance of people getting that lab done. And on a bell curve, that average is usually people who are seeking out something and therefore can be skewed in a way. And when someone's labs are high or low from that range, it's assessing and looking for disease. So
Mm.
conventional ranges are very important. And from there, though, I like to look at functional ranges. So functional ranges will be a little bit tighter, and I like looking at functional ranges that are formulated from additional training. So, I actually, before I go any further, I want to go back and I just want to recognize that when we go to our endocrinologist and they're only doing a TSH and a T4, it's because they won't be doing much different with our nutrition or lifestyle recommendations. They're thinking in the silo of what do I do with medicine?
Yeah, it's
And
true.
and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but as a consumer, as someone living with type 1 diabetes, it's good to know
Mm.
that there's more ways to support our health. Even when I go in, I'm like, I want more than the TSH and T4. I want a full panel because I want to know how my gluten free, mostly trying my best to eat a whole food diet is working for me. But I want to
Mhm.
see how my antibodies are moving to recognize, do I need to evaluate dairy? Because I know dairy sometimes, if I have too much, doesn't make me feel good in my digestion and also makes my
Mhm.
blood sugar sticky. So I have some symptoms of like to evaluate dairy closer. So I just took 10 steps back, but hopefully this is helping to answer this conventional
Yeah.
versus functional range as well. Our doctors are doing a good job, but they don't have layers of training that we wish they all had. And some of them do.
Right.
So as a dietitian, I have conventional training, but I also have functional medicine training. And that's
Yeah.
where this functional lab range conversation comes into play. And functional ranges are looking at optimization. So conventional ranges are looking for disease, functional ranges are looking for optimization.
Mm.
And usually in functional medicine with functional ranges, we're not looking at labs in isolation.
Yeah.
And we're looking for trends to understand what's going on under the hood on the terrain to
Mhm.
help someone even better. Is it,
Yeah.
you know, a high CRP or and even if I see a high CRP, that's the inflammation marker I kicked us off with, and thyroid labs off, it might not
Mhm.
be that the thyroid's not producing enough hormone. It might be that inflammation is the root of the problem, and that's what we're trying to support to overall heal.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. And, another thing I think we need to look at, and maybe even closer, and I think that's one of the advantages of living with a chronic disease. I mean, believe it or not, there are some advantages because
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
get to look closer at our health. I don't know that the average person is as conscientious, generally
Yeah.
speaking. We have a lot of motivation to stay on it and to understand what we're interpreting. But on top of that, we live with a chronic disease, and we also, and a lot of our listeners here have the hormonal state that on top of that. And like I was saying too, with that one client, is just that there's the overlap of symptoms where you don't really understand. But the bottom line, she didn't feel well. And
Yeah.
that was the part that the doctor was just say, well, everything looks fine. I'll see you in 6 months, if you can imagine that.
Yeah.
So, and just to tell you the tail end, and actually, her story, like many stories, are going to be in the book that you and I are putting together. So, Highs, Lows, and Hormones is coming out soon. But this is a good indicator because I think that it really does. It makes this much more validating when we know there are other women that have experienced very similar situations as our own. And I know a lot of people, are reaching out to you, whether it's friends or people online. You're hearing these stories and clients and patients.
Yeah.
And I think that's the number one thing. And what, the show does and what this book is going to do and what our conversations continue to do is just to help you advocate so that you get this goods, because this is never medical advice that we give here on the show. It's just, whoa, eyes open, right? And let's just, do the best we can with what we know. And, but she did end up pushing back and was still got resistance from that particular doctor. She ended up finding a new doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 and she got the full panel done, and she got the full results, so now she knows the whole story, and she is on some thyroid medicine right now being treated again, and she's feeling a whole lot better. So, yeah, it takes time, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And as you share this one client, I certainly have encountered a lot of clients as well with
yeah,
the exact same storyline.
no,
But there's something I think is important to say as well that in our 30s, our 40s, our 50s, our 60s, of course, our sex hormones are moving. And when our sex hormones are moving, other systems move too. Our ovaries don't move in isolation. And that's why thyroid, again, this is becoming a very thyroid conversation, but the
Mhm.
thyroid hormone, the TSH, the levels can all adjust with those adjusting progesterone, estrogen, testosterone,
Yep.
and so forth. So that's why it's
Yes.
important not just to test once and carry on, but to test consistently.
Yes.
Something else I hear is, "I don't feel right. My doctor said everything's fine, and I
Mhm.
feel like if I just got on some thyroid hormone, I would lose the weight." And a lot of women are like, "Oh, my thyroid is fine. It's not the reason why I'm gaining weight." And I think that's something else I hear a lot, and it's like, "Okay, well,
Yeah.
let's understand why you are gaining weight, why you are exhausted, why you're having
Yeah.
very similar symptoms," and that can be, A, a drop in estrogen, or B, it
Mhm.
can be a a different lever, and that can be cortisol problems. So
Okay. Yeah.
again, I just want as people are listening and they
Yeah.
hear and feel what we're saying, that it's not always thyroid only.
No, and this is a good segue. So what do you think the key labs are
Sure.
that we often overlook? I mean, there's always the doctor because it's usually the doctor that's filling out the lab request sheets, right? And these are things that we can go to them with. I know you have a recommended lab sheet. I have one as well. They probably look identical.
Yeah,
And again, it's such a cool little thing you can carry in or send it to your doctor and say, hey, what about, this is something I'm curious about. We have a right to know. Again, assuming insurance covers it and all that, definitely check those boxes before you proceed. But key lab markers that women in this stage of life you think should be standard.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think if I had $1 for every time I was asked this question, I would be a rich lady. And
Yes.
I think this question's asked so often because when we have our annual physical or when we have our routine lab work with endo, there's some missing holes of things that I really want to see on someone to really understand why they have symptoms and do they line up with labs, or can I uncover something that might be essential? So
Yeah.
often things it's the baseline stuff, but if I may suggest, I can give you a link, Melissa, and I
Hmm.
actually now can provide labs to clients and it
Ah,
is out of pocket, but this link will give our listeners a list of just what to advocate for. And if the doctor suggests that they would not want to do the full regret, because
sure.
I do get that a lot, I'm happy to assist in it and also give an interpretation with type 1 diabetes because we're unique birds. But
Yeah.
my point here is not to sell myself, but to provide options.
Yeah.
But the list that I would propose would definitely include vitamin D and vitamin D at least twice a year because out here I live up north in
Yeah.
the Midwest. I have very different seasons from
Yeah.
December to June. And the
Hmm.
exposure of vitamin D is very different. And
Yeah.
what I should be externally dosing and supplementing with vitamin D varies from season to season. So I
Sure.
like to see that twice. And I don't like to supplement without testing. I like to test and not guess. So
Hmm.
vitamin D, D as in dog. I like iron and ferritin. These ones aren't always commonly
Yeah.
on consistent labs, and those can show me levels of inflammation, not only iron status, but levels of inflammation. But it also can talk to me about digestion and nutrient absorption.
Mm.
I also like, of course, the CBC. I like a full cholesterol panel. I like a full thyroid panel.
Hmm.
I like that high sensitivity CRP. And I'm missing a few here as I don't have a list in front of me, but it's good to
Yeah.
see magnesium. It's good to see homocysteine. It's
Yeah.
good to see zinc, B12,
The
folate.
B12. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I thought
Um,
about B12. Yeah.
and for us women, I really like seeing APOB and APO little a. And these are more cardiovascular markers that are just important to watch and see, especially if someone's utilizing hormone replacement therapy.
Yeah. Awesome. Yes. And I know we've talked about those cholesterol tests here on the show before.
Yeah.
About a year ago, we did a whole episode on statins, and I wish I had the number in my head because it to this day is the most downloaded episode.
Yeah.
Just because it's such a hot topic among our community about whether or not, should I be on a statin? And that's another whole conversation. You could definitely check it out. And I'll be sure to link it here in the show notes for everybody to think back on. But the APO B and the little a, that's kind of the next step as far as that's kind of like if the cholesterol is looking, there's some indications there that maybe a doctor wants to look closer. Don't you think that's a good idea to maybe say request that rather than getting pushed on a statin? I just had this conversation with somebody the other day, and I was like, get the full picture before they, you
Yeah.
know.
to
Kind of
fully
bully you into a
evaluate.
statin. Yeah,
Yeah, and just fully evaluate the need,
yeah,
overall, certainly, certainly.
yeah,
So, and I just like having that at least, once an awareness and then maybe every year at least, especially if they're like,
yeah,
"Hey, you've had type 1 diabetes for a decade or 4 decades."
yeah,
I have a lot of those clients. I'm 3 decades plus,
yeah,
and we wanna put you on a statin, and my response is, "Okay, but can we look at my labs and see how equipped that recommendation fits with what my data is showing?"
right, right. Again,
And I don't want a stroke, I don't want a heart attack, I don't want heart disease,
right.
but I also wanna make sure I'm supporting my health with the right tools, and maybe a statin is that tool, but sometimes it's not.
Yeah, yeah. Let's consider and look at some other things first. So let's connect the symptoms to the labs because again, because you and I both believe, and it's all the hormonal side of it. And this is kind of a sideways view of this topic because hormones in general, symptoms matter more than anything, especially perimenopause. So
Yeah.
to get those sex hormones tested is it's not necessary when you're still cycling because of the erratic times of the
Nature.
cycle and yeah, and, the levels. So it's not you're not gonna put a conclusion on knowing any number at any particular time. I guess unless there's some sort of of consistency around it. But to me, that's a lot of work. I don't know. I don't know if a doctor would even really know, unless you're really working with a specialist that knows how to interpret that. But symptoms really are number one. I think once you get into postmenopause, it can be clearer, obviously, because at that point, like if you're on hormone therapy like myself, it's kind of a fun thing. I do like to look at labs just to kind of see how what I'm being prescribed. And obviously, absorption has a lot to do with that as well. We want to make sure that we're metabolizing it and we're absorbing it and that the liver's working good. So again, there's so many things here. But levels kind of confirm that, or they will tell a different story. Um,
So symptoms for hormones and that's how I guess let me rephrase. When perimenopause is diagnosed, it's not often by labs, it's by
no.
symptoms. And
Mhm.
the symptoms for perimenopause are so long and broad and wide, and a lot of them can layer over other things. So symptoms from shoulder pain to joint pain to inflammation to poor sleep to mood to rage to cravings to
Yeah.
fatigue, weight gain, the list goes on. And those I'm putting under the umbrella of perimenopause. Another symptom I recently saw, and I was like, oh goodness, yeah, I can relate to that. It's just kind of feeling like your eyes are a windshield wiper of feeling gunkiness
Uh,
or not being able to see through your eyes clearly. What is
mm,
that? Perimenopause.
mm,
But the symptoms of perimenopause
yeah.
can be really unique. They could be not common, and there's a lot of them. And then a
Yeah.
lot of those symptoms will overlap with thyroid, and a lot
Mhm.
of those
Mm.
symptoms will overlap with cortisol. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
we could go through a list more thoroughly, or what did you have in mind that would be more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as far as specific symptoms, I know, there are, and you just listed, many of them that are very common. But if I love how you teach women to follow their symptoms, and
Yeah,
so if you could walk us through that. So, like for instance, if a woman is experiencing high blood sugar, gosh, right. I mean, and we kind of know that this could be pointed to different things, but as far as that sudden need for, gosh, I can remember back in the day when I didn't even realize I was in perimenopause when my basal rate almost doubled.
yeah,
So if that's not a symptom, I don't know what is, of what's happening. And
yeah,
especially when we're told when we say, "I'm doing all the same things," right? I'm
yeah,
doing what I've always done, I'm eating what I've always eaten, I've moved the way I always move, and suddenly my body requires so much more insulin just to stay at even a close to, that average time and
yeah.
range. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did miss the obvious. In perimenopause are these hormonal shifts. Some big
Yeah.
symptoms would be suddenly recognizing how much more insulin you need to
Yeah.
cover proper blood sugar targets.
Yeah.
And I actually even ask clients often, I'm like, "Oh, what's your typical total daily insulin amount?" And so
Mhm.
many of my clients lately are like, "I have never looked at that," because they're
That
on
is
a pump, right? And everything's so
so
automated.
yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, wow."
You bring up that's a very good topic, 'cause this came up again with somebody I was talking with the other day. Yeah, it's the unawareness, and that's exactly what it is because the pump I mean, we can find the information, it's
Yeah.
easy to do in the daily reports, but it is interesting when you have this background is just kind of giving you what you need. So over time, you may not realize. And as we know, that is going to be contributing. It could be contributing to weight gain
Yeah.
because again, insulin is a fat storing hormone. So it
Yeah.
can just kind of accumulate over time, not
Yeah.
knowing that suddenly her body suddenly needs more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a big one to point out, or just,
Yeah.
excuse me, more dramatic blood sugar spikes from your go-to meals.
Yeah.
Bolus is just not covering your needs, or maybe that pre-bolus time was 10 minutes and now all of a sudden it's 30.
Hmm.
Signs of insulin resistance, and insulin
Yeah.
resistance is surely natural with stressful seasons, dehydration, sleep deprivation,
Yeah.
but dropping estrogen. So when estrogen drops, the body naturally becomes more inflamed and insulin resistant, and that's a big symptom to recognize. What can I do differently? What can I do to prevent
Absolutely.
this?
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think it looks like for a woman to advocate? What's the best thing we can do in the doctor's office? And we talked about the lab sheet. Maybe it is coming in with that lab sheet with what they're talking about, but tracking symptoms, coming in with some sort of a record of what's changed, what's feeling different.
Yeah. Pretty well summarized, but I always tell clients, okay, you have your appointment. When's your next appointment? And
Mm,
we see that date. And I'm like, okay, now until then, let's be very attentive to in
yeah.
your calendar or in that. I always tell clients when you have that appointment in your calendar, keep all the notes there because more than likely you're not going to
Mm,
forget your phone at home. And
that's
in there, I
true.
want you to just track like this week before bleeding and insomniac, or this week before bleeding, because that's usually the most problematic week,
Sure.
my insulin needs are 30% more. And just having very concrete data to go in that explains your complaints.
Right.
Because doctors are so well trained to be evidence-based,
Yeah.
data-based,
Yeah.
that sometimes just relying on symptoms is not how they're trained to help us.
Hmm.
I suggest that, and then, of course, advocating for certain labs to get or getting them on your own and bringing them in.
Mm.
When I work
Okay.
with clients, again, I'm
Yeah.
a dietitian, but I talk
Yeah.
about my client's village, right? We want our
Yeah.
endocrinologists to be in on our support, and we wanna work cohesively,
Yeah.
and having their awareness on your labs is important regardless.
Yeah, yeah. You brought up something that's important too, and it just reminded me. Yeah, tracking. And then again, we were just talking about that daily insulin. So again, 2 weeks before a cycle, got an appointment in 2 weeks, tracking her daily insulin. Again, we've got that data in our pump report or our CGM report, whatever it is that you're looking at, all these different apps that we're using.
Yeah,
That's clear. Numbers don't lie.
yeah, yeah,
Numbers don't lie. I mean, you can even look a year ago, maybe even go back into a pump report a year ago and say, well, it used to be that 5 days before my cycle, I was using XYZ units. Now I'm suddenly needing so much more. So again,
yeah,
there is proof in that. There is proof in that. And it's going to back up what she's feeling, what her suspicions are about what's changing. Yeah. So
yeah,
I don't know a doctor that would deny that
yeah.
data in front of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to help our listeners out, so we've said a number of things, but I just want to clarify. It's important to have like your clarity report or the Dexcom report for the
Mhm.
blood sugar data,
Yeah.
but to make sure you also have the insulin information to go with it. So,
Yeah.
for example, I went to my endo and she really wanted me to adjust how I was utilizing my insulin pump. And I gave it 2 weeks and I was like, listen, I don't feel good. And she's like, but your time and range was this. But she wasn't looking at the amount of insulin I was taking for that time and range.
Yeah.
So it's good to have both pieces ready
Yeah.
to share that data with the concise and short amount of time we have with them.
That's perfect. Yes, absolutely. Because they do tend to look at it at a very high level, but they're
Yeah.
not looking down into the details. Details matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. And I was just going to say at the end of the day, all of our type 1 diabetes are so unique and our hormone needs are so unique. So just really knowing what you're dealing with and collecting that information, reflecting on it so you can have a
Yeah.
conversation is
Yeah.
the best thing you can do.
Yeah. So what if a lady gets pushed back? I don't know if this has ever happened to you as far as just being questioned or told, I'll see you or we'll look at it again and, at your next visit. Is there language that maybe we can use?
Go
I think
shopping.
Right, right, go shopping, I love that.
Shopping for
Well,
someone new to
yeah,
help you,
and,
honestly.
yeah, and I think, I think personally, I think if you can go in and just say, "Well, this is what I think and feel, and this is what I've learned. What do you think about," again, there's all different kinds of scenarios that you can kinda complete that sentence with. Give them an opportunity to step up and say, okay, well, let's see what I can do. Or maybe there's somebody else in their office. Maybe there's another practitioner that is better schooled in that sort of area. I mean, because I know it's hard, once you create a relationship with the doctor, you get used to who they are and, the convenience of seeing them. I would say, just give them the benefit of the doubt, give them the opportunity to step up and
Yeah.
to give you, to,
Yeah. And to really empathizing in that no practitioner is perfect. I am
no,
not perfect. I think
right.
I come with a lot
Yeah.
of experience and professionalism, but I know there might be areas that I'm not the perfect suit in. But I often look at my doctors and lean into appreciating what their best things are about what they
Right.
can do for my health.
Yeah.
And then finding opportunities to fill where I need more support from them from someone else.
Yeah.
And that might be shopping for a new endocrinologist, or that might be outsourcing support in other ways, as there's so many virtual options. You and
Sure.
I, we're both virtual businesses. And again, I guess
Yeah.
I'm promoting ourselves, but there are a lot of
Yep.
great people and leaders and coaches out there that can help cover some ground with those of us with type 1 diabetes that aren't getting
Mhm.
enough out of their endos. And it doesn't have to
Absolutely.
be us, but there's options. We're
Yep.
in 2026 and life is changing so way with different abilities and virtual support is definitely there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned earlier about the book coming out, and you're a contributor in that book. What part of if you want to maybe give us a little bit more detail about what you I think pretty much we covered it today. There might be something I left out, but is there anything maybe that I left out that's definitely going to be included in the book that's going to really help to equip? Because this book is going to be more than just kind of reading through and learning. It's going to be very applicable. I mean, because that's our goals, right? It's not just learning, it's really finding the tools, equipping women to take that next step to better care for themselves.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Areas that I was proud to support in the book, which is going to be such a great resource, was talking about how to use food as medicine, was
Mhm.
talking about how to optimize the liver to support hormone digestion and detoxification, and overall the importance of liver detox were a few things, as well as things that we had covered today, labs versus conventional versus functional, what
Yeah.
to look at, what to ask for, and more.
Okay. So to compare, because we usually we have 10, 12 minutes with our doctor. And I think again, it depends on that doctor and that relationship and what you feel like you're getting from and we're not beating up doctors by any means because they serve a really important role in our care. What do you think this book is going to do differently or to help kind of compound on what they're now getting from their medical team?
Yeah, I think it's just going to build education and awareness on how to support women with type 1 individually to a
Mhm.
better degree.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. I think it's going to take them to the next step. The word equipped just keeps coming up, but it's just, yeah, just feeling more empowered and, like you say, educated and supported. So before we go today, is there, if a listener feels stuck right now, let's say their last doctor visit, they were just kind of given the pushback. Well, everything looks fine, even though she's got some symptoms that she maybe can't quite put her finger on. It might seem a little messy because she's just not sure. And then there's all the noise that she might be hearing on the internet or other books. I think that's another part of it too. It's like, we think we know based on what we hear, but we really don't understand. So it all comes back to really not making any steps or taking any action. So what do you think would be if a woman is listening today that's feeling not herself, but the labs aren't necessarily triggering the doctor to give her any more attention?
I would say we're using good words today. A few stood out from terrain to equipped, but I think my takeaway is just to be really curious, and reflect. Reflect, take
Mm,
time where you can to, reflect on what's going on in your life and how you're feeling and what you're trying to do to support that and where you're falling short, where it's not helping enough. And I think that would be a huge first step.
Yeah, 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 I totally agree. Pay attention to that because you matter, right? And another thing too is to prepare questions before an appointment. That's real important too, right? We do. We tend to get in there and we're sitting down and it's like, well, and it's something else too. I think symptoms are something over time that we can kind of get used to, right? That's just kind of, especially a woman's nature. We just tend to kind of buck up and we just kind of, the poor sleep as well. I'm just going to not be a good sleeper from here on out. Or, the blood sugar is just going to be a little stickier right before my cycle starts and all of that. But maybe really, again, to note, to track, and to pay closer attention to really what's changing so that they can, again, that doctor visit. I'm feeling for all the endos right now. It's like, man, just gonna have some women coming in and they're gonna be like ready to go.
Yeah.
But that helps them too. I know doctors want to help, they want to solve, what's going on for us.
Yeah. One of my favorite questions that I started asking in my late 30s was, how many women have you helped with type 1 diabetes through menopause? And
Mm.
what does that support look like? And I remember it definitely like tilted my doctor's head, but she shared her advice and her opinion on the use of HRT and how she favored it. And I really appreciated that. And I think it just helped me warm up myself to go deeper on better questions with her. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I think just asking broadly, like, what's your experience in helping people like me? Not just with type 1, but
Yeah.
also going through this
I
other
like that.
season.
Yeah, yeah. And they may not have a response, like you say, but at least it gets them thinking that this is who I am, this is where I'm at, and this is something I need. So maybe it's something. I mean, again, it might be somebody else in the same office, in the same medical office. So again, don't be afraid to pay attention to the symptoms, looking at your data and questioning those labs, and just to get back to the beginning because. Standard is standard, but standard is not optimal. And if there's symptoms that are crying out and you know that you need to know more and learn more, definitely seek out further help or ask those questions and push for further labs. But yeah, definitely don't just settle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And maybe there's a lab that's not captured or representing that symptom you're having.
yeah,
Again, if the thyroid looks beautiful and perfect, but we keep having thyroid symptoms,
it's
maybe it's
something else.
something else.
It's
Yeah.
something else. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Again, the body's not lying to you. It's got to open the ears and the eyes for sure. Well, thanks again, Kelly. How can our listeners reach you? I always put all this here in the show notes to make it easy. Do you have anything coming up that maybe they need to know about?
Yeah. Always a joy to talk with you, Melissa. It just feels like home. So
Oh,
thank you for having me. And I look forward to future conversations. People can always find me at Diabetic Dietitian. And then I'm under the practice of T1D functional nutrition. And as for things coming up, I always have my seasonal reset. That's as soon as next or this month, right? We're the end of March. So this will
yeah.
probably come out early April. So my next
Mm-hmm.
reset is April 12th.
Okay.
Um, and then come summer and fall, I'm launching my first signature program. So I've been
Ah,
working hard on that, and I'm excited about that, but,
nice.
yeah, definitely feel free to contact me if you have any questions or if you also want help with labs, something that I actually love doing.
Yes, 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 yes. I think that's my numbers
Yeah.
science mind too, because I've always liked numbers. So maybe that's why we
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it. Another
Yeah.
part of our brain that we like to utilize. Well, thanks again, and definitely reach out and stay in touch with Kelly. And we'll be back in here same time next week. Have a beautiful day.